The history of SWAT, Special Weapons and Tactics teams, traces back to the 1960s, a period marked by civil unrest, rising crime, and the need for a new type of law enforcement unit that could handle high-risk situations beyond the capabilities of standard police officers. SWAT was born out of necessity as urban areas faced unprecedented challenges, including armed standoffs, riots, and the threat of organized criminal elements. This essay explores the origins of SWAT, its evolution, and its broader impact on modern law enforcement practices. The 1960s were a transformative decade in the United States, characterized by political upheaval, social movements, and changing attitudes towards authority. The civil rights movement, anti-Vietnam War protests, and race riots exposed the limitations of local law enforcement agencies in handling large-scale disturbances. Additionally, rising crime rates in urban centers, particularly violent crimes, put further strain on police forces. Traditional policing methods, which primarily focused on patrolling, investigations, and community relations, were often insufficient when facing large, hostile crowds or heavily armed criminals. The need for specialized units that could respond quickly and efficiently to extreme situations became evident. One of the key catalysts for the creation of SWAT teams was the Watts riots of 1965 in Los Angeles, a 6-day period of civil unrest that resulted in 34 deaths, over 1,000 injuries, and more than 3,400 arrests. During the riots, the Los Angeles Police Department, LAPD, struggled to control the situation, as officers were not equipped or trained to handle the level of violence and destruction they encountered. The experience underscored the need for a specialized team capable of managing such scenarios. It was in this context that the idea of a tactical police unit emerged, laying the groundwork for the formation of SWAT. The official birth of SWAT can be traced back to 1967, when Inspector Daryl Gates of the LAPD proposed the creation of a highly trained, elite police unit to handle violent confrontations, hostage situations, and other high-risk incidents. Gates, who would later become LAPD chief, saw the need for a tactical unit that could be rapidly deployed in emergencies. His vision was influenced by military special forces and counterinsurgency tactics used during the Vietnam War. Gates initially conceived the unit as a small group of officers equipped with advanced weapons, armor, and training. The unit's primary role would be to respond to situations involving heavily armed criminals, barricaded suspects, or large-scale disturbances. The name SWAT was originally coined as Special Weapons Attack Team, but the term was later changed to Special Weapons and Tactics to sound less aggressive. The first SWAT team was comprised of 15 officers from the LAPD, handpicked for their skills and physical fitness. These officers underwent rigorous training in marksmanship, hand-to-hand combat, and tactics for dealing with armed suspects. The LAPD SWAT team was formally established in 1968, marking the beginning of a new era in American law enforcement. The LAPD SWAT team's first high-profile operation occurred in December 1969 during a standoff with the Black Panther Party at their Los Angeles headquarters. The Black Panthers, a militant African-American organization, had become a focus of law enforcement attention due to their revolutionary rhetoric and advocacy for armed self-defense. The FBI had labeled the group as a national security threat, leading to increased tensions between law enforcement and the Panthers. The LAPD obtained a warrant to search the Black Panther headquarters for illegal weapons, but when officers attempted to execute the warrant, they were met with gunfire from Panther members. SWAT was called in to manage the situation. Over the course of the 4-hour standoff, SWAT officers exchanged gunfire with the heavily armed suspects. Several officers and Panther members were wounded, but the situation was eventually resolved without any fatalities. The operation showcased the effectiveness of SWAT in handling situations that would have overwhelmed regular police forces and solidified the team's reputation as a valuable asset in law enforcement. The success of the LAPD SWAT team in the late 1960s and early 1970s caught the attention of police departments across the country. Many large cities, including New York, Chicago, and Dallas, began to establish their own SWAT teams, modeled after the LAPD's unit. These teams were typically composed of officers with specialized training in tactical operations, marksmanship, and crisis negotiation. As SWAT teams became more widespread, their role expanded beyond dealing with riots and barricaded suspects. They were increasingly used in hostage rescue operations, counterterrorism efforts, and the execution of high-risk search warrants. The FBI, which had long been involved in counterterrorism and organized crime investigations, also formed its own hostage rescue team, HRT, in 1983, inspired by the success of local SWAT units. The 1970s and 1980s saw several high-profile SWAT operations that demonstrated the importance of having specialized units in law enforcement. One of the most significant was the 1984 McDonald's massacre in San Ysidro, California, where a lone gunman killed 21 people before being shot by a SWAT sniper. The incident highlighted the critical role SWAT plays in responding to active shooter situations. Another notable event was the 1993 Waco siege, in which federal agents, including the FBI's HRT, were involved in a 51-day standoff with members of the Branch Davidian religious sect in Waco, Texas. The siege ended in tragedy, with more than 70 people, including many children, dying in a fire after the FBI attempted to breach the compound. The incident raised questions about the use of militarized tactics in law enforcement and led to increased scrutiny of SWAT operations. The September 11, 2001 terrorist attacks in the United States marked a turning point in the role of SWAT and similar tactical units. In the wake of the attacks, law enforcement agencies at all levels of government increased their focus on counterterrorism, and SWAT teams became a key component of this strategy. The Department of Homeland Security, established in response to 9/11, provided funding and equipment to local police departments to enhance their counterterrorism capabilities, including the expansion of SWAT units. This period also saw the increasing militarization of SWAT teams. Local police departments began to acquire military-grade equipment, including armored vehicles, assault rifles, and tactical gear, often through the Department of Defense's 1033 program, which allows the transfer of surplus military equipment to law enforcement agencies. Critics of this trend argued that the militarization of SWAT blurred the line between the military and civilian policing and led to an escalation of force in situations that did not warrant it. The increased use of SWAT teams for routine police work, such as serving drug warrants, also drew criticism. A 2014 report by the American Civil Liberties Union, ACLU, found that SWAT teams were increasingly being used in drug raids, often with little evidence of immediate danger. The report argued that this overuse of SWAT contributed to unnecessary violence and the erosion of trust between police and communities, particularly in minority neighborhoods. Despite the controversies surrounding the militarization of SWAT, these units have continued to play a crucial role in law enforcement, particularly in responding to active shooter situations and terrorist threats. One of the most notable examples of a successful SWAT operation in recent years was the response to the 2013 Boston Marathon bombing. After the bombing, which killed 3 people and injured hundreds more, SWAT teams from multiple agencies were involved in the manhunt for the suspects, Tamerlan and Dzhokhar Tsarnaev. The manhunt culminated in a shootout in Watertown, Massachusetts, where Tamerlan was killed, and Dzhokhar was eventually captured after a standoff with SWAT officers. The operation was widely praised for its coordination and swift resolution, although it also reignited debates about the balance between security and civil liberties. Another high-profile SWAT operation occurred in 2016 during the Pulse nightclub shooting in Orlando, Florida. A lone gunman opened fire in the nightclub, killing 49 people and injuring many others in what was, at the time, the deadliest mass shooting in U.S. history. SWAT teams were deployed to rescue hostages and neutralize the shooter. Although the response was successful in ending the standoff, the tragedy highlighted the challenges faced by law enforcement in dealing with mass shootings. SWAT teams have come a long way since their inception in the 1960s, evolving from a specialized unit created to handle riots and armed standoffs into a central component of modern law enforcement. While SWAT has proven to be an invaluable tool in responding to high-risk situations, its growing role in everyday policing and the militarization of its tactics have sparked ongoing debates about the appropriate use of force in civilian contexts. The history of SWAT reflects broader trends in American society, including the increasing focus on security, the rise of violent crime, and the complex relationship between law enforcement and the communities they serve. As SWAT continues to evolve, it will likely remain a subject of both admiration and controversy, balancing the need for public safety with the protection of civil liberties. Thanks for watching Techie Millennial, and be sure to like and subscribe if you liked the content.